right? So
Yes, sir.
how these vaccines have been created? Is there anything to do with gene manipulation here? What is the gene manipulation component in developing these vaccines? I have to be a little more specific with my question. And can you tell me exactly what are the technologies which have been utilized to make the vaccines? कल यही तो पूछा था.
So the knocking out of a virulent gene in the like the segment of DNA that causes the actual disease. So the removal of that and then administering that RNA or like RNA in RNA vaccine. So that is one use of genetic
And
manipulation.
sir, now one vaccine, like I don't remember the type of vaccine, they have taken the vector, maybe the ChAdX one, in which they have taken the vector in which they have put the mRNA of a viral COVID viral gene, and then they develop it.
Okay, very close. Now again you are coming closer. Anybody else who wants to try?
Sir, recombinant
So there
DNA
is
technology.
vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, which is an mRNA based vaccine.
Recombinant DNA
There,
technology.
Manvi,
that takes.
Manvi, please bolo.
Yeah, so actually, we heard a lot about the Pfizer vaccine, which is an mRNA based vaccine. So, in that, principles of gene manipulation play a major role.
What is this vaccine? My main concern is that you should know exactly the major construction part of the vaccine so that you can understand exactly how gene manipulation has played a role.
Like the adenovirus is the vector, sir. I remember that
That is
was
fine.
by Oxford. Yes, sir.
This is fine. Vector is fine. What about the virus? Have you heard about spike protein?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So what are these spike proteins?
Sir, they
so
With an adhesion of virus.
the surface proteins of the virus which help them to bind to the receptors and then get ingested and then cause the disease.
First of all, I could not hear completely, but if anybody wants to, you are talking, I think, right, but anybody wants to rephrase this, what he has told?
Sir, actually, these spike proteins they help the virus to adhere to the surfaces of things or
Very good.
human.
Right.
Sir, these spike proteins helps in viral entrance and provide its pathogenicity inside the host to elicit an immunoresponse.
Right. So they are the major antigens
They are,
also, but at the same time, yes, go ahead.
so they are
Bolo, bolo.
actually the they are actually the glycoproteins that extend from the surface of the virus, that protrude from the surface of the virus and helps in attracting to the place so that they can react further.
So they help in adhesion to the target cell, which are
Yes.
very specific type of receptors.
sir, ACE2
Okay.
receptors.
ACE receptors, and that results into viral entry of the or entry of the virus into the target cell.
And
And
so,
later on, whatever happens in the cell, that's a separate story. But the point is, once we have identified that these are the spike proteins, which are the key molecules that initiate infection process. So if we have, and these are the recognizable domains. So in what if we create exogenously these small proteins in, say, any of the cell or immune cells or antigen presenting cells? So what is going to happen if you provide these small proteins from outside? So what will happen? उसके लिए तुम्हारे को सेकंड सेमेस्टर में बहुत अच्छे से प्रोफेसर अंजू श्रीवास्तव सिखाएंगी the concepts of immunology. I think you have already gone through understanding the concepts of immunology. how antigen presenting cells basically work.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Endogenous and
Cells
exogenous.
get activated, how they produce antibodies. So then there's a whole cycle of biological response to these peptides initiate. So either you can actually inject peptides, that's a simpler process, but उसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? If you want to inject directly peptides, पहले तो peptide vaccines आती थी ना, subunit vaccines बहुत सारी आती हैं, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There are many subunit vaccines जहाँ पे protein based जो है injection देते हैं. Protein के साथ अपना एक advantage disadvantage बहुत है. Protein vaccines are, they just limit the immune response to a certain type unless it's highly immunogenic. वो proteins जो हैं they fade off their response. But अगर हम mRNA डालते हैं, so mRNA, if you insert a vector and it keeps on generating that small particle which has a small exogenous domain present on the vector. तो vector क्या है? Vector तो अपने surface जो vector है, is a virus. But this virus does not do anything bad to the human being. But उसके अगर बाहर, उसके outside में, which is a coat protein, उस protein को थोड़ा modify कर दें और उसकी जगह वो अगर spike proteins अगर show करने लग जाएगा, so what will happen? So now the immune response will be generated against these spike proteins. So if we have an RNA-based vaccines, so if you inject that RNA-based vaccine, the immune response will be robust because there will be
So your voice is
Sir, you are not audible.
हाँ? क्या हुआ?
सर आपकी वॉइस ब्रेक हो गई थी बीच
So
में.
you were not audible.
You were not audible, sir.
ऐसा ही है आजकल सारा communication जो है, because it's all going through internet. So there are many classes are going on. So this can happen, I think.
Sir,
So we'll have to manage.
you can turn off your video तो सर थोड़ा सा ठीक हो जाएगा.
If I turn off my video. Okay,
Yes, sir.
very good.
Yes, sir, because you're also presenting तो इससे ज़्यादा data होता है.
All right. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Here the main component is to identify that gene. अब हमने ऐसा तो नहीं किया पूरा का पूरा वायरस का RNA से रेट्रोवायरस. ऐसा भी कर सकते हैं हम पूरा रेट्रोवायरस का RNA ले and we insert into the cell, target cell, instead of putting in the vector. So can that be done?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it can be done, but what will happen with that? What will happen? वो आदमी वैसे ही इन्फेक्ट हो जाएगा
तो normal virus की तरह behave करने लगेगा.
So it will be a
तो
complete
normal virus की तरह behave करने लगेगा.
it is a normal virus. So we only take out the small part of that genome and try to express it. And this is, for the benefit of the mankind. So here we have to identify, we have to characterize that particular gene. Then we have to, remove it from its native place. We have to amplify it, or then we have to insert it into a different organism. And then we have to expand it into that organism so that it can be used as vaccines. So this whole process basically requires gene manipulation. Similarly, many other type of vaccines, they require different kinds of gene manipulation mechanisms. And among them, the least manipulation is basically in the inactivated viruses. Otherwise, all other kind of approaches require some or the other gene manipulation aspects. So we'll not go into that much of detail. We'll go of the vaccine. You can go back and read with the perspective that what are the gene manipulations experiments or particular steps that they have carried out. You should be knowing. So when we do talk about genetic manipulation, we basically identify a specific segment of DNA. Before we actually go into the gene or you say that the functional aspect, the DNA is nothing else but a chemical, isn't it? Do you agree with this or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
And what
sir.
kind of chemical it is?
The nitrogenous bases.
What kind of chemical it should be classified as?
Sir,
Huh?
acidic.
Sir, it is acidic in nature.
It's
It is
an
an
acid.
acid molecule. It's an acid present in the cell, and it's a polymeric molecule, right? So when you talk about it, we have to always go back to the history. I think some of the teachers, if they are addressing the chemical nature of DNA, they will let you know exactly how this DNA and RNA were initially identified. These are basically identified as acids which are present or extracted from the cell. And this identification process actually happened, 100, more than 100 years back, right? So there are a lot of people who are able to identify that there are some nucleic acids, and what they are made up of, what is their function, people who are not knowing. The function of these nucleic acids were only established when we got to know, I think there was in 1950s and 60s, and who were the people who actually found that the nucleic acid is the genetic material? You should go
Hershey
back
and
and
Chase.
So,
Chase.
McCarthy and McKenzie,
Cardi MacLeod.
तो वो एक्सपेरिमेंट किया गया था जिसमें जो एक वायरस था बैक्टीरियोफाज, उसको ड्यूअली लेबल किया. एक लेबल
Hershey and Chase.
Hershey Chase.
एक को लेबल किया, डीएनए को लेबल किया फॉस्फेट से, and then they tried to see exactly what are the labels, which type of labels which are actually passing through generations to generations, right? So मैं तुम्हारे को एक hint दे दिया हूँ, you can go back and read it. So genetic engineering makes it possible to transfer single genes, and it also helps in identifying genes, and genes can also be transferred from one species to another, or it can actually be within the species, or it can be from prokaryotes to eukaryotes and vice versa. So its DNA has no boundary. DNA does not recognize any boundary. Only thing that is recognized is the genetic information which is embedded in the DNA, that is recognized, right? So if we look into the biotechnology, it depends heavily on gene manipulation, and there are main components. And what are the main components? The enzymes, cells and tissue for man needs. These are the main components of biotechnology where this gene manipulation is helping cloning of tissues, plants and animals, production of drugs and vaccines, and genetically engineered plants, animals and bacteria. But there can be endless possibilities, and there's a very emerging technology, industrial component which is increasing, which is called biotechnology industry. So if you look into different prospects for biological scientists, I think biotechnology firms are spread all over the globe, and they recruit very good scientists, and you can say that the students who can perform different kinds of manipulations. So it is basically, it's a crafting work. So you need to know your tools. If you are very good at your tools, so you'll be able to do better manipulations and quicker. There are two things. You should be able to make something like, you have an artisan or a person who actually, or a sculptor who makes a very nice portrait, or you have a very nice sculpture is being made. So what do they require? One thing is that he should be very fluent in doing his work, so that the sculpture that is being crafted, so that should be made faster and that should look beautiful. So both things are very much common with the gene manipulation. So the scientists who are basically going to work, they have to ensure that they should achieve their goals in a minimum amount of time, and the efficiency should be good enough. So what are the basic tools in biotechnology? So if you look into it, and we'll be talking about these tools, one is the transformation, where basically we want to have, when we have to understand the basic function of a DNA, We have to put it somewhere in the biological system. We can put it the same DNA in eukaryotic cells also, as well as prokaryotic cells, but we prefer it to be in prokaryotic cell because of certain advantages. And what are these advantages? For which we actually perform transformation of a DNA first in the prokaryotic system, not the eukaryotic system. क्या हुआ? सब चले गए दूर?
So maybe it's easy to handle.
हाँ?
सर maybe सर इस वजह से ताकि हम डायरेक्टली ऑब्जर्व कर पाए.
So because they have less complex body organization than compared to the eukaryotes.
Yes.
Sir,
Okay.
sir, because they are too small.
Yeah, they are small. The overall organization is not so complex, and we can modify those organisms. So you should understand that we cannot, if we talk about inbred animals like mouse or hamsters, you can again have inbred organisms. But if you talk about, say, in general, human being or any other like goat, sheep, or those kind of animals, you can take out the cells, but they are not homogeneous. So, and they're very difficult to grow in culture. Their cells will be difficult to grow in culture. You can actually transform those cells also. But when we talk about bacteria or prokaryotes, smaller organisms, so what do? Is they give us an advantage that they're simpler in structure. They can be modified and mutated, and they are uniform in line, so they do not change their germline very quickly, and the genome is very, very simple and small. So in those perspective, and the most important characteristic of using the prokaryote is that they have a very fast growth rate. So within 20 minutes, E. coli grows from 1 to 2 and 2 to 4. So it's a geometric increase in the number. So you can have large amount of DNA within a very short time if you transform that DNA or the prokaryotes with that particular DNA, right? So you understood why we always ask you, okay, we have to do transformation only in prokaryotes first, so that we can multiply any given DNA in many copies in a very short span of time. And then we need cloning vectors. It's not that you put all the DNA into a cell and it will start, multiplying. So it's not like that. Whether you make it a circular DNA or it is a linear DNA, any DNA which is given to even the prokaryote, it is not going to sustain unless it has certain features. The DNA should have some features, as well as the host cell also should be competent enough to take up that DNA. If they're not competent, what is going to happen? There will be no transformation. They have to be, the host cell has to be, their genetic makeup is made in such a manner that it should receive the DNA as well as maintain the DNA. Otherwise, you will be taught about restriction modification system. If on Saturday, Dr. Harish Batra, I think he's one of the guest faculty here. So I have already told him to take a class tomorrow on restriction modification system. So he will tell you exactly how how external DNA, if it enters into prokaryotes, it is also not allowed to be propagated very easily unless you compromise some of the key systems in the prokaryotes also, and you mutate those systems, and then a foreign DNA can propagate. And then the DNA itself requires some signature features to it to be duplicated and multiplied. And those features are nothing else but, you might have heard about origin of replication. Have you heard about it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Oocyte.
Have you heard about ARS? Autonomous replication?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In what context we are talking about ARS?
So East में होता है.
Could you repeat, please?
In
Sir,
what
yeast.
context we talk about ARS, autonomous
In yeast,
replication
we talk
sequence?
about them in yeast.
Sir, they are the regions in the prokaryotic system where the replication starts.
So is it ARS or OREC?
Sir, OREC in prokaryotes, ARS in eukaryotes.
Eukaryotes.
ARS is an yeast
Is
Saccharomyces.
see both these signatures are nothing else but a sequence in a DNA. So never think that these are special labels. They are again sequences which have the capability to recruit replication complex. ऐसा नहीं है कि सारी जगह पे replication fork or replication machinery can go back and sit. So first sitting के लिए all the replication machinery has to recognize a particular sequence to start replication process. Okay, so if a DNA does not have this replication machinery, it is not going to propagate and it will die down, or it will get degraded, or it will be chewed by endonucleases. To assist that the DNA is replicated properly and expressed properly in a host cell, we require different cloning vectors. Isn't it? Did you get it?
Yes, sir.
So DNA is, ऐसा नहीं है कि DNA has to be tied or something like a knot has to be created. It is not like that. DNA has to be properly ligated. You have to cut down the cloning vector DNA, and then you have to cut down your target DNA, and you have to see to it that the whole molecule becomes single. And there could be cloning vectors can be linear when we talk about yeast and eukaryotes. But when we talk about prokaryotes, they have to be in the circular form. So these vectors are usually, circular, and you can think about plasmids, and there could be different size of plasmids are there, and we'll be talking about different cloning vectors later on. And how to cut the DNA and cloning vectors and do all these kind of cutting and pasting of DNA, we require another very important basic tool, which is called restriction enzymes. And restriction enzyme, what do they do?
So they cut the DNA sequences.
Sir, they cut the DNA sequence at specific site.
Specific site, right. So restriction enzymes are only good because they cut the DNA at a very specific site, which can be determined by their specificity. And the most interesting part is why these restriction enzymes are good, because at a particular class, which is class 2, that they cut within their or very close by to their recognition site, right? So that is why these enzymes are very good. They are very small in size, and they can be recombinantly produced, exogenously produced also. So that is why many industries, they are running to produce only the restriction enzymes. And the reverse of the restriction enzyme is when you have to seal the gaps. These are the ligases. And then you have to sometimes extend the gaps, and you have to extend the DNA. Maybe you may have one strand, you have to make the other strand. So in those cases, polymerases are there. There are many different types of enzymes apart from restriction enzymes which are required in cutting and pasting of the DNA. We'll also be discussing about them. So these are the very important 3 areas or 3 tools which assist in gene manipulation, and we'll be taking them one by one. Apart from that, nowadays there is another very emergent area called bioinformatics, which is also coming into picture. Just a minute. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
So bioinformatics, anybody has a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, how can we draw a line between ORI and the automated replicating sequences. Is it that ORIs are found only in the prokaryotes and ARS is found in eukaryotes like yeast?
Drawing line is the best drawing line is that one found in prokaryotes, other found in eukaryotes, but at the same time there are different sequences also. They are not exactly same, and ARS is a very these kind of sequences are only known in lower eukaryotes. In higher eukaryotes, we really don't know the exact sequences where the replication actually starts, right? So this area, autonomous replication sequences, are very undefined in higher eukaryotes. Although there are some knowledge is available that there are certain areas where there are higher chances where the replication fork will create. If you actually go back and look into the DNA replication, you will get to know about these facts, because there are many places within the human genome where replication fork has to start afresh. So there could be many ARS in a single chromosome. On the other hand, if you talk about prokaryotes, there is usually one ORI which is present. There is no ARS in that. So there are certain characteristic differences among replication sequences in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and these are the way we are representing them differently. So we'll never say ORI in eukaryotes, and same way ARS is not being used for the prokaryotic replication origin.
Thank you, sir.
So there are certain keywords. Don't worry about it. You know many of it. I'm not going to discuss what are the keywords. There are many more such terms, and I'll suggest that if you get a hand on Dictionary of Molecular Biology, so you will find many of the terms which are present there. The work can be done with your Google also. So Google will keep on defining whatever terms you give. But if you have a Dictionary of Molecular Biology, I think you will actually go and check out terms which are new to you, terms which are little, you are knowing them, how to define those terms. I think that will be very good. So always try to consult and read in between. Those dictionaries are available, so you can go back and check that. But before we actually go into the basic recombinant DNA technology, it is very important to understand the DNA, and you should be able to work with DNA, and we'll be taking care of the methods by which we can do that. So I'll be taking the class on DNA isolation and how to analyze the DNA as a chemical. Here at the moment, we are not talking it as a genetic element, but we are talking it as a chemical. So we'll look into the DNA quality, quantity, how do we assess the integrity of the DNA, what are the physical configurations of the DNA, whether they are linear or circular, or different conformations are there, how to make DNA pure, because if you want to do some genetic manipulation, it is very important that there should not be a mixing of other DNA fragments, so DNA quality should be good. And I will talk about that in the sense of cesium chloride density gradient ultracentrifugation. Then we'll talk about DNA isolation methods. There are different methods are available depending upon what is your goal of working with DNA. You can actually select. That could be alkaline lysis, spooling, commercial method. Spooling is a very rudimentary method in which you get a very dirty kind of DNA, but you get good amount of DNA. So spooling is a method, I think, if some students are taught in 10th, 11th class. So spinach se bhi spooling dikha sakte hain. So many schools are showing exactly how to take out DNA by spooling. Then commercial methods are there. There are much more sophisticated methods, which gives a very clean preparation of DNA, because in case you have to do another set of transfections, transformations, or you have to do a high quality DNA analysis, in those cases, you need to have a very good purity DNA. For that, we select different DNA isolation methods, and these are commercial methods. And there could be other higher level of DNA analysis in which we can go for spectrophotometry, which actually tells about the quantity of the DNA, and then we can also go into the gel electrophoresis, and there could be two different types of gel electrophoresis are already there, which is called agarose gel electrophoresis and polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. So now you will think that these are all things we have already studied. So we'll be having a slightly different mode where I will keep asking some questions rather than keep giving you the information, right?
Yes, sir.
So how many of you have already done alkaline lysis? Raise hand. Two of the students, 3, 4, 5. Rubel is there. Renkin, Juhi. So I think there should be at least 50% people should have done this DNA isolation by alkaline lysis. They are only lazy. उनको जरा स्वेटर में से हाथ निकालने में थोड़ा देर हो रही है. Right? Am I right or not? It's okay. So now I have already given you a slide. So I would like to know exactly what is the mixture that we basically put to do the alkaline lysis, not the DNA isolation. I'm telling you the alkaline lysis and why. Alkaline lysis karna hai hमें. So what we are going to do? ये सारे किए हुए हम कहाँ चले गए? They're all silent. Question is incomplete. Why? हमें alkaline lysis तो करना है, पर किसका करना है? What are the target cells which we have to lyse?
Plasmid.
Plasmid is a cell?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Who is speaking?
No, sir. Sorry.
It's not a cell.
हमें उसका genetic material
E. coli cell, I was saying.
Hello. Bolo bhai.
So plasmid
Right.
is not a cell.
Yeah, that is right. So we have to, we need to know our target cell. Alkaline lysis, if I say that eukaryotic cells ka karna hai, we are not going to get anything. All the DNA will be degraded and lysed, sheared. Everything will happen to the DNA and we will not get any DNA isolation. We basically perform this alkaline lysis. It's the simplest form of lysis in our system, where we kill the bacteria to take out the plasmids. Okay. So if we talk about alkaline lysis method, if somebody tells you that, okay, हमें bacterial DNA निकालना है, and that too an intact bacterial DNA, this is not going to be the method. Okay, for that, we have to do a phenol chloroform method. We'll talk about that method little later. But alkaline lysis method is specifically meant for isolation of small circular DNA, which are called plasmid DNA, which are present in the bacterial cell. Or it's not that all the plasmids are always present in E. coli. अगर आप E. coli देखोगे, in basic E. coli में these plasmids may come and go. They give some additional extra character to the E. coli, which if it provides a survival advantage to the bacteria, then and then these plasmids stay inside, otherwise they don't stay there. तो हम एक्सपेरिमेंटली कुछ प्लाज्मिड्स को बैक्टीरिया के अंदर डालते हैं अपनी तरफ से, एंड वी अलाउ इट टू ग्रो, एंड वी अलाउ द बैक्टीरिया टू ग्रो, वी अलाउ द plasmids which are present inside to multiply in those E. coli. Got it?
Yes, sir.
And when I that we purposefully insert these plasmids in E. coli, that means I am also telling you, and I have already told you, that they have to give some survival advantage. So, अगर तुम कहो कि कुछ E. coli में तो डाल दिया हमने और ग्रो कराते रहे, तो what will happen? there will be a chance that majority of the E. coli will not have the plasmid, and only some of them जिन्होंने acquire किया था, they are only having the E. coli. So ऐसा नहीं है. We have to see to it, if our target is to multiply our plasmid, we have to see to it that जो survival advantage वो plasmid confer कर रहा है, जो दे रहा है उस बैक्टीरिया को, उस environment में रखते हैं. Say ampicillin, जो antibiotic है. So these plasmids provide some antibiotic resistance. तो उस plasmid में एक छोटा सा region होता है DNA में that codes for specific enzymes which helps to metabolize the drug. So अब क्या है? If you are growing these E. coli who have the plasmid, maybe 5% या 1% of E. coli है जो actually transform हुए, जिसके अंदर बैक्टीरिया में हमारा plasmid गया. So if you put the whole population in say ampicillin, एक एंटीबायोटिक में रखा, तो all 99% of bacteria will die because they don't have the plasmid. So only those E. coli which have the plasmid present in their protoplasm, so what will happen? Those E. coli cells will survive and grow in the ampicillin. So same way, so when you see these all red circles are there, they are basically placed, these cultures are grown in certain antibiotic medium so that the E. coli is having this the plasmid inside them. So now our target is the E. coli to be killed, and we have to get our plasmid outside. And to do that, to kill the bacteria and to take these plasmids outside without breaking them, right? So you apply a most important chemical called alkaline agent, which is NaOH. You have a lot of NaOH, so you increase the pH of the medium. So all the cell membrane is compromised, but NaOH does not shear or break the membrane. For membrane breakage, there is something else is required. How you break the membrane of E. coli?
So using detergent.
Yes. So what kind of detergent we usually use?
Sir, SDS?
Sir,
SDS.
Right. So we actually apply some detergents and we break the wall, and then we have to maintain the pH also later on. So we add some buffers also. GT solution is there. We also don't want that endonucleases are activated. So we actually maintain osmolarity. We maintain later on. We also have to maintain pH, and we also have to maintain the we have to keep the endonucleases inactive. So we add EDTA, right? So it's a divalent cation chelator. So if we have these kind of setup, what we are going to do is we break the DNA membrane of the E. coli. We break the DNA also to some extent. If it is very large, it makes the DNA single-stranded, because the acids, when they come in close contact with the NaOH, they become single-stranded. They get denatured. So everything gets denatured. Because of the plasmids are very small in size, they do not get sheared. So all the DNA of the genome of the bacteria, it makes a big mesh, something like you have seen if you have flown kite nearly in 15th August or Sankranti ke time mein. So all the threads get tangled with themselves, and that makes a large macromolecule. And if you spin it down, so everything gets, what will happen if you spin it down and centrifuge it? What is going to happen?
So the dense
It forms a pellet.
Pellet
The tangled mass of
All tangled threads will settle down in the form of a pellet. On the other hand, when we are neutralizing this NaOH, so what is going to happen? This plasmid will regain its own double-stranded circular form, and they are not going to get mixed with the entangled form, and they usually, ऐसा नहीं है कि एक भी plasmid जो है नीचे नहीं रहेगा, it will not go into pellet, but yes, majority of the plasmid, they remain suspended in the supernatant, and then we can take it out and separate it from the chromosomal DNA, which is left behind. Okay, so ऊपर से supernatant लेते हैं, and then we recover the plasmid out of it. So this is the basic principle of alkaline lysis. So you can go back and read about it, exactly what are the different steps. I'm not going to take you through all these steps. You should read what happens here. And there are now other different DNA isolation methods. And one of the best and commonly used is anion exchange chromatography method. In this, because of the property of the DNA, which is, it's a negatively charged, and you can have a resin, you can have a solid support where you have, if you put a lot of positive charge, and if you allow the DNA to pass through this positive charge column, so what is going to happen? So, एक तो method हमने बता दिया.
The DNA will stick to the column.
Yeah, DNA is going to stick to the column, and rest all the things which are not heavily negatively charged, they will pass through. So most of the time, these other impurities which are present in a lysed cell or a cell lysate, they pass through, and only the DNA which is present, because sometimes you have a lot of carbohydrates and proteins which are present in the supernatant. So if you pass it through this column, so what will happen? That all the DNA will actually get stick, which is primarily your plasmid. And if you increase the salt concentration now, once you have washed the column and your DNA is already sticking to, let me show you with some highlighter, laser pointer. So here, so first thing is that you have to load your DNA on an anion exchange resin. So once you load it on an anion exchange resin, you wash the column. So washing will not actually affect the bound DNA which is present here. But as soon as you take the column further and you increase the salt concentration now, so what is going to happen? Now, because of the increase in salt concentration, there will be a nucleic acids can be easily eluted out. So once you elute it, you can actually add ethanol and RNAs, and you can actually make a pure preparation of DNA. So there are different ways you can make a pure DNA preparation out of it, which can be further utilized for next round of transformation or doing whatever you want to do in downstream. We'll be talking about exactly how they can be utilized. Okay, I'll not go into detail. So there is another method called DNA isolation using chloroform methanol. So I don't know how long we have time. Ethanol precipitation. I think we can stop for the next class. We'll talk about chloroform methanol based, isolation. We actually stop here. And if you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, we will meet again next week and we will continue this class further. In the meantime, I'll suggest that you read all DNA isolation protocols. And for that, there is one particular book is very good called Sambrook. So if you want to read a Sambrook book, so it will be fine. You can actually download this book. It is again available from PDF drive.
So can you please tell the spelling of the book?
I can show you the book. I have some time, so I can do that.